Happy Easter, everyone. This is such a strange year, 2020 Easter is so very different than any we have ever experienced in my lifetime. And it is a year that we are all celebrating Easter separately, but still with each other because we are bound by our hearts. And I tried to think about this is the first time ever that I have not either been with my children, my grandchildren, my parents, or with very close friends. And it's something that's really hard for me. I've tried to think about sharing it and how could I reach out and touch all the people that I love so very much. So I decided this is such a different Easter. So I got myself all ready. I put my Easter bonnet on, Jane, Caroline, in my Easter bonnet, I have no frills upon it, but I'll be the grandest Nana in the Easter parade. And I wanted to make sure that Caden and Jax for sure knew, but I wanted to make sure that Luke and Trey, you need to ask your parents to sing Cassie's favorite Easter song she ever sang. Was here comes Peter Cottontail, hopping down that bunny trail, hippity hoppity Easter's on its way. My children learned to love Easter because my family loved and celebrated Easter because of my gran-gran. And I wanted to make this a memorable Easter, so I tried really hard and I decided I was going to share with you a story, and I'd like to try and read it for you. I wrote it down, and this is my version of a story that was created in my car as we headed out for an Easter trip. My children were very young. Jace, Cassie, you were young. And I believe that there were 4 children and I in the car, 2 of which were my children. There might have been a 3rd boy in the back seat with them, but I don't know for sure. But there definitely were 2 other boys in my back seat. And we were driving in my car, and I was trying to help pass the hours away. I explained, let's play a game. Nana Becky's good at playing games. I was good at playing games when my children were little too. And I proceeded to explain that we would all celebrate and we would contribute a few sentences at a time to this game, and we would add a new little part at a time. And then it would be my job to somehow figure out how to tie it all together and to really tell the story. Years later, we still talk about it sometimes, and we definitely remember the story and some of the special funny parts of it. So I decided I would write it down for my grandchildren. So, happy Easter to my little precious grandchildren, Trey, Caroline, Luke, and Jane, and Jackson, and Caden. We have little baby Annie on the way. A long time ago, back when the animals could talk. The Legend of the Easter Eagle by Nana Becky. A very loving family lived a very simple life. They didn't have fancy things, but they had plenty of joy and love. It filled their homes and it flowed out of each one of them. It poured over into all of the animals, the neighbors, and everyone who ever met them. People never heard them complain. They would whistle and they would sing songs when they worked, and they loved and they treasured each other deeply. Each person and every animal were essential and important to this family and farm, and each one of them knew it. Without any one of them, they all would fail, and they would miss the essential part that was played by that special one. On this farm, the animals loved their children so very much. Children brought joy and excitement with them into the barnyard when they came out of that farmhouse. The animals found themselves looking forward each day to the time that they would hear or see them come bursting out of the farmhouse doors and into that open air. They brought their joy and their laughter with the innocence of their youth. The beautiful way only a child can view the world. You must understand that to view this world through the eyes of a child, it is often seen as magical. It was on one of these days that something happened, changing all of their lives. The little boy and girl were laughing and chasing each other as they headed to the barnyard. All of the animals were watching with anticipation as they awaited the infectious love that came with every stroke of their hand or hug around their neck. As they watched their children, they saw them stop suddenly. They had come to a halt, standing and looking at something on the ground in front of them. The animals craned their neck around to try and look at what it was. It must have been small on the ground at the children's feet because the animals were unable to see what it was. They watched in silence as the two children very carefully picked something up and slowly walked toward them. And when the children entered the barn, they looked around and seemed to realize that all of the animals were wondering what they had found. They looked at each other, and the older child slowly opened his hand to reveal one large white egg. Where did it come from? Why was it out in the middle of the yard? What was going to be done with this egg? And was something going to hatch out of it? So many questions. The children decided the best place to put this egg would be in the chicken's nest. So they carefully brought the egg over to the chicken coop, where they gently placed the egg into the chicken's nest. And this chicken was the best mother hen that they could think of. She did such a good job sitting on eggs and keeping them warm. She would be the best one to become the mother hen to this egg. The children stood back and watched as if the chicken knew what was expected. They saw the precious little mama chick go over, examine the eggs from all sides, and then promptly climbed on top and nestled herself down and around the egg. It was very large compared to most of her normal eggs. She sat on it, but had to work pretty hard to cover the entire egg all the way and keep it warm. The children smiled. They clapped their hands together and they looked around at all the animals, and they realized everyone there, animals and children, had a special secret. They were going to be watching and waiting to see what would happen next. Over the next few days, both animals and humans would take their turn to look in and see that the proud mama chick was still sitting on her huge egg. One night, there was a big commotion in the barnyard, and the farmer man came out of the house and yelled. He seemed to scare off what the animals heard him say was a coyote. It had startled everyone so much that when the mama hen went to go get back on top of her egg, she looked around and her egg was gone. She ran around and she looked everywhere. What would happen? What could have happened to her egg? She squawked and she made a fuss. She made all the other animals listen and to help her look for this egg. From the bunny pen came what must have been the sounds that told all of the animals the egg had been found. It was discussed and decided that what must have happened in all of the commotion was the egg got bumped, and it had rolled out of the hen's nest, slipped through the chicken wire, and into the bunny pen. Ha! The bunnies knew it was now their job to keep this egg warm. They all huddled around it, and as the night progressed, the warmth of the rabbits created the perfect setting for whatever was inside to start making its way out and into the world. Suddenly, the egg started to bump and rock as the animal inside worked hard to get out, and the bunnies hopped away from the egg to give it some room. With all of the animals looking on, they saw the first crack form. Then, a sharp, tiny beak pecked and picked at the shell on the egg, and soon all of the animals saw the gray and black, wet little head of an animal. They were not familiar with this animal. It looked kind of funny as each piece of the egg fell away from the little animal, and finally it had totally appeared. The chicken said, "Oh, that's not a chicken." The bunny said, "That's not a bunny." The cow said, "That's not a cow." The goat said, "That's not a goat." The sheep said, "Not a sheep, not a sheep." "It's not a pig, not a horse." They all watched and they wondered as this big, awkward bird came out of the egg and looked around. Its head almost caused the bird to fall over. It immediately rolled and wiggled its way over to the group of bunnies that were surrounding it. This baby immediately felt loved by its family. The baby snuggled down into the rabbit's fur. Cuddled with all of her new bunny family, she got nice and warm and thought to herself, "I'm so happy to finally be here. I love my new family. Oh, this bunny life will be fun." With that, the baby bird fell fast asleep. The next morning, when the barnyard animals heard the door to the farmhouse slam shut, they all watched and waited. The two children ran laughing into the barn and headed straight to the chicken coop. As they looked and saw the empty nest, they quickly turned to scan and look at the rest of the barn. Where did the egg go? Suddenly, the little girl ran over to the bunny pen. She peered down and looked at the bunnies as they snuggled around an awkward, funny-looking bird who was sound asleep. The children, they giggled at the sight, and their sound woke the sleeping bird. It watched as the other bunnies jumped and hopped away. It stretched and stood up. It studied the other bunnies, and then, with all of the energy that it could muster, the baby bird attempted a small hop. The entire barn must have laughed in unison as the little bird took its first hop, not first step. It was definitely a hop. The bunnies hopped over closer and encouraged the little bird to practice with them. The children and the animals huddled around watching while the little bird practiced hopping. As the day progressed, life on the farm went on as normal. The bunnies took great pride in their newest family member. The mother hen wouldn't let anyone forget her part that she played in raising the egg. She moved her nest over to the side of the coop where she could be right beside the little baby on her side of the fence. This baby bunny bird was the newest addition. When the farmer man came in to check on the animals, he saw the little bird in the bunny cage. He went to go move it, and when he did, the cow mooed and the horse nudged him away with his head, and all the bunnies went over to hide the baby. The farmer decided to leave the little bird and went on to do his chores. The children decided that they were naming the bunny bird BB. They stroked the gray feathers of Fluff, and they whispered things like, "When you grow up, you will be amazing." The little baby looked up and around with big eyes. She knew she was loved. As the children placed her back down in the bunny pen, she promptly hopped over to her family, and together they all snuggled down in a group at the edge of the cage. They were right next to her mother hen. Mother hen sat on the other side of the fence, watching and looking protectively on. She didn't want to ruffle any feathers by telling everyone this is not a bunny. She protectively watched and proudly knew that she knew. It's a bird. It was good enough for her. As baby BB grew over the following weeks, she hopped everywhere with the bunnies. She thought she was a bunny. Mother hen would constantly scratch around in the chicken food and make a huge mess. Somehow she got it to fly everywhere, and some always managed to make it into the bunny pen. When BB tasted it, she liked it. She would quickly eat as much as she could find, and Mother hen watched and was silent. As BB grew, she realized chickens laid eggs. She watched, and as chickens hatched out of an egg, she watched as mother bunnies gave birth to baby bunnies. She wondered, why was this so different than what she could remember? She shook her head and she decided she didn't care. She was happy. She was loved. She was a bunny. One day, the animals in the barn were allowed outside. It was finally what BB had heard the animals and family saying, spring, yippee! As little BB hopped out into the fresh air with the other bunnies, she looked at the beautiful blue sky. She stretched her legs and she cleaned herself like she saw all the other bunnies doing. And as she stretched and preened, she looked up at the blue sky, and she saw far above them something up there so high. The children had noticed that little BB wasn't so little anymore. Her feathers had changed so much. The farmer man came out one day and watched the funny hopping bird that thought it was a bunny. As the bird hopped, the farmer man said out loud to the entire barnyard, "You are not a bunny. You're an eagle." The children gasped and they looked down at BB. Suddenly, the entire barnyard, except BB, realized for the first time just how special she was. BB hopped around from one animal to the next as if to say, "What's going on? What are you talking about?" The little boy went over and scooped up the bird with pride and hugged it tight, and he whispered into her feathers, "You really are special. We knew it. We just knew it." And from that day on, things started to change. Little BB did not understand when the children would come play a game they called fly. They would take her, pick her up, and then let her go, just dropping her on the ground. She fell the first time, splat to the dirt. She didn't think it was such a fun game. She hopped off to be with her bunny friends and didn't look back to see if they wanted to keep playing. The next time they came and picked her up to play fly, she stretched her legs out to protest. They tossed her in the air, and she seemed not to fall so hard to the ground. She realized she wasn't hurt at all. All of the other animals and the children were cheering and clapping. What had happened, she wondered. The children came and scooped her up to play their game again, and this time she was ready, and they dropped her, and she stretched her arms out wide and seemed to float to the ground. She jumped around, going over to the other bunnies as if to say, "Did you see me? Did you see me?" She wondered why the children didn't play fly with the other bunnies. It was such a fun game. But she didn't care really because it was her time with the kids, and she loved it. And over the next few weeks, she got good at this game, and she would glide gracefully to the ground. She quickly landed and hopped back to play the game again and again, and the kids graduated their game to the fence. They would stand on the top rail and they would drop Bibi and they would yell, "Fly!" Bibi would stretch her arms out and glide gracefully to the ground. Next, they went to the treehouse and they tossed her, saying, "Fly!" And she stretched out her arms and she glided over the tops of the cows. And as the wind caught under her, she slowly came down with a hopping dismount after flying over her family of bunnies. All the bunnies and chickens were watching her. When she landed, she hopped over to her family of bunnies and said, "Wow, did you see me?" They all said, "We wished we could fly." Bibi said, "Oh, but you can. All you have to do is flap your ears." They laughed at her. She said, "No, really. All you have to do is flap your ears and you can fly too." One day, the family came and they got Bibi. They took her from the farm and they loaded her into the family truck. They drove for what seemed like hours. The children whispered stories into her feathers. With tears in their eyes, they got out of the truck and they took Bibi in their arms. They walked as a family together to what looked like to Bibi the edge of the earth. Bibi looked out and saw the beautiful blue sky, and then something else. It was black. And it had its arms stretched out like she did when she played the game of fly. Oh, it was beautiful. Bibi couldn't take her eyes away from the beautiful black thing. The farmer man said, "Bibi, you are an eagle. You are just like that bird. You should be flying, not hopping." Bibi looked at the black thing that seemed to float on the beautiful blue, and then back at her people. The boy and the girl walked over to the edge of the world, and together they stroked her feathers and said, "It's time to fly, little eagle." Bibi stretched out her wings, as she always did when she played, and they tossed her in the air. All of a sudden, the air caught under her wings, and she felt as if it just lifted her up. She was surprised and kind of scared, and she started to pull her arms in, and suddenly she was falling. She screamed. She screamed and reached out her arms again, and all of a sudden, the air caught under her wings again. She was floating back up again. The other big birds, they came over and they showed her how to move her arms up and down and how to move with the air. Oh, she was doing it. She was doing it. Look at me. She heard cheering from behind her and she looked back. The family was clapping and cheering and crying and hugging each other. Oh, how happy Bibi felt. She was soaring on the beautiful blue. And finally, she didn't look back. The little family drove home, happy and sad, all at the same time. The farmer man explained to the children how very lucky their family had been. They had had a chance to raise a baby eagle. He told the children how happy they should be for teaching the baby to be an eagle, not a bunny. He told the children how proud he was that they let their eagle fly away. He explained that wild things are not meant to be kept. They are meant to be free. If it truly was theirs, one day it would come back to them. He explained this is a lesson that is very difficult to understand, but sometimes we are not meant to keep things. They are not ours to keep. As the days went on, life on the farm went back to normal. One day, the children saw an eagle out in the trees in the field, and they just knew it was Bibi. They ran out to say hi to her, but she flew off before they reached her. As they reached the field, they saw all the bunnies. They were there looking up at them. It was so strange, they thought. The children explained it to their parents, what had happened, and that they seemed to be disturbing the bunnies. Several days later, they saw her again. She sat on a branch out in the trees, and the bunnies, they were there in the field below her. The children wondered what was going on. They wanted to ask her what was happening with her. How was her life, and what was she talking to the bunnies? What are you talking to the bunnies about? During dinner that night, they told their parents about seeing Bibi up in the tree again, kind of like she was talking to the bunnies. The parents explained that Bibi was probably just trying to tell the bunnies what had happened and what her life was like now. The children moved on and grew up, as most children do. But at Easter time and for the first signs of spring, they think back and they remember their baby eagle. They remember their days on the farm, and they remember the lessons that they learned back at a time in life when they still believed in the impossible. Or could it be possible? You decide. But the animals, they know the real story. The story only a child will believe because they have the innocence of their youth. They still believe in the impossible and miracles. Bibi was teaching the bunnies to flap their ears and fly. She was secretly telling them and teaching them that they were eagles. She would whisper they could fly if they just would believe and try. Sometimes the stories have been told of children hearing voices as if whispered to each other on the wind. You are an eagle, not a bunny. I am an eagle, not a bunny. Sometimes stories have been told by children that they saw bunnies flying, but nobody believed them. Do you? As you celebrate Easter this year, ask yourself, do you or your children ask or wonder where the story of the Easter bunny came from? Do you wonder about why does a bunny bring eggs? Do you wonder how eggs or baskets get up on tables or in trees or even off the ground? Do bunnies lay eggs? Where do chocolate eggs come from? Could there really be an Easter eagle? Could bunnies really fly? Do you believe in the impossible? Do you believe in miracles? I'm not sure what you think, but you could ask a child or someone who still believes. This Easter, I choose to believe the impossible. I choose to believe in Jesus Christ, that he died for us, for all of our sins, and that he rose from the dead so that we can live with him again. I choose to believe in miracles. I believe each of my grandchildren and any one of us can be an eagle and soar if we just believe and try. May we all try to believe in miracles. Happy Easter, everybody. Love, Nana Becky. The story and legend of the Easter Eagle.